home for round 22. I'm your host, Kieran Francis, and joining me is Bryn Wakefield to talk about all the latest football topics and the run home for the finals. Bryn, how are you today, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
Very good, mate. Looking forward to chatting AFL with you. Let's start with Collingwood and Nick Daicos. 2 weeks ago, Collingwood were flag favourites. They beat Port Adelaide and Adelaide, and they were flying. After losses to Carlton and Hawthorn, the lustre has kind of wore off a little bit, and some pundits are saying that they are going to struggle to win the flag. Where do you think Collingwood are at after the last couple of weeks, and where do you think their problems have been?
Yeah, I don't think it's cause for panic yet, Kieran. They've had a bit of trouble with their midfield recently, so Nick Daicos comes out with a hairline fracture in the knee. Tom Mitchell was subbed off last week with a bit of a quad issue, and now Steele Sidebottom might miss this week. So they're a bit down on form. They've got some injuries, but overall they've been the best side all year. And I see them probably, finishing strong and in first place again.
I tend to agree with you. I think that they still should be flag favourites, but we're going to learn a lot about them in the next couple of weeks. We'll talk about their run home shortly. Just wanted to talk about some of the findings out of the last couple of games, the Collingwood performances. It looks as if the game against Carlton, they actually had more inside 50s. So it kind of appeared that they just struggled to convert. And it was also a case of being smashed in the contested football. But the Hawthorn game was a real worry. Because they were smashed in the inside 50s by 16. And one of the unbelievable stats is that the centre clearances, Hawthorn won the centre clearances 18-3, but Collingwood won the stoppage clearances 33-16.
I had that written down as well.
Yeah, which is quite extraordinary. It obviously meant that Hawthorn's centre bounce setup was pretty relevant there. The Reefus done a good job on there. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a discrepancy like that. But obviously that gave Hawthorn first use of the ball out of the middle pretty much every time, and that would have obviously contributed to a lot of the pressure they could put on Collingwood. So yeah, interesting times. Collingwood also have the injury worries. Tell us about Nick Daicos.
Yeah, so it looks like it's going to be about 6 weeks and maybe a return in a prelim final if they get that far. So it's you've got to feel disappointed for him. He's probably due for the Brownlow, and it's just his second season, and he might still get there, but it's very disappointing for a young guy like him. He's just been unbelievable all year.
Yeah, it's definitely a big loss for the Pies, just in terms of the creativity that he provides. It's going to require some manoeuvring of other players. I would think that Taylor Adams, who's played a lot at half forward, will probably have to play more midfield time now, and also Jack Crisp, who has been at half back, will have to move back in and provide his run and carry as what Daicos does. So it'll be interesting to see how the adjustments are made. There's no rest for Collingwood, though. They've got 3 tough games to finish the season, although they're all at the MCG and they're all on Friday night, so you'll enjoy that, Collingwood fans. They've got Geelong, Brisbane and Essendon back-to-back MCG Friday night. Geelong on Friday night. How do you see that game panning out? It's a huge game.
It's a very, very big game. It's very hard to call. So obviously Geelong got the win against Port Adelaide last week, and they'll get Tom Hawkins back. It's going to be a tough one, though. I wouldn't write off Collingwood.
Neither would I. It's going to be a cracking game. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with the loss of Daicos. Also, Nathan Murphy's up too, so that will make the back line a little bit shorter. Billy Frampton might hopefully come back in for Collingwood, so it'll be a big game. Moving on to Carlton, who some people are saying are the best team in the competition right now, and I guess how can you argue after they're winning 7 games in a row?
It's hard to argue, and it's really behind that midfield. So even without Adam Chera and Sam Walsh, they've been smashing just about everyone in clearances. It's 46-22 against St Kilda. So it's an interesting one. I guess I wonder, is Voss's job secure even if they don't make finals, Kieran?
I think it might be. I think the vibe of the club kind of feels as if it's a very positive at the moment. And even when Carlton was struggling, there was still not a positive vibe around the club, but they rallied around Voss, and I think everything was still there. It didn't appear as if they were close to sacking him, despite losing, I think, 6 games in a row. You make a good point about the midfield. They obviously were missing Walsh and Chera on Sunday against St Kilda, but then Zach Fisher came out of nowhere and got 32 disposals and a whole bunch of clearances, and Paddy Dell has played and got a whole bunch of clearances. So they actually have players that are stepping up into the role, and it was even though they were missing Walsh and Chera, they still dominated the clearances, particularly in the second half. The thing with Carlton is that I think that they're very much a confidence team. You go back to the St Kilda game on Sunday, they really took the game on early, but after a few turnovers and some Ross Lyon style of football, they lost their confidence in playing their aggressive run and carry game. Once that was rediscovered after probably a halftime bake after from Michael Voss, it was just, they were exceptional. Third quarter, running and carrying in waves, getting the ball inside 50, unpredictability, getting with their forward entries, and it was simply unstoppable. And you kind of feel as if they've built this confidence based on those big wins they had at the start of their winning streak, where they won by the 4 games by 50 plus points. And they've obviously been putting that confidence through the Collingwood game and now St Kilda. So they've got Melbourne on the weekend. Should be a great game. How do you see that game panning out?
It's a really good test for Carlton, that's for sure. So it will be a really good game. Probably, are they the 2 informed teams at the moment? They might be. Melbourne's making a late charge for second spot. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out.
Should be a cracking game. Carlton also have games against Gold Coast and GWS. I don't think they'll miss the finals. I think that they should get in comfortably. And I mean, if they can keep this form up, there's no reason. I mean, we've seen teams win the premiership from outside top 4 before, so no reason why they can't. We'll move on to Port Adelaide, who were obviously going very well with their 13-game winning streak quite a few weeks ago, but things have started to deteriorate. The club's down to 4th now. Tell us about where you think Port Adelaide are, particularly after the game against Geelong on the weekend.
They're in a very interesting spot. So they've obviously just now dropped into 4th. They've got a good chance to stay in the top 4. Well, they really should. And they're struggling for depth. That's the issue with Port Adelaide. So their ruck stocks are down with Scott Lysette out. Their forwards are sort of coming in and out with Charlie Dixon, and now a PCL injury to Trent McKenzie, who's been their really solid second defender all year.
Yeah, and I don't think it helps that Mitch Georgiadis isn't available as well. He'd be pretty handy to be available at this time of year. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange situation. They feel very much like Collingwood of last year, a team that's a really close, good, solid team. Maybe not one that's capable of winning the flag, but one that's capable of getting the result in close games, which they've shown a lot. Obviously, they didn't get the job done on the week against Geelong. How did you see that performance? Because obviously, it's a tough place to go to down at Geelong. And Port had a few injuries, and they weren't too far off.
It was more competitive than I thought it would be, that's for sure. So yeah, like you said, a really tough ground to play. A lot of players out for them, and it really was just behind their midfield. So Rosie and Butters are having pretty outstanding years, and that looks to be their specialty. They can get it out of the middle and run and hit targets. So they'll need to back those guys in the finals. I'm not sure the rest of the team is really that elite as that midfield. So yeah, we'll see how they go for the rest of the season.
I'll tell you what, you still wouldn't want to play an informed Port Adelaide in the finals though. But it will be hard for Port Adelaide to go further, you would think, if they've got to play away from Adelaide Oval. So victory, one more win for Port against GWS at Adelaide Oval, Fremantle at the Stadium, or Richmond at Adelaide Oval should lock in top 4. So you'd think that at least the Richmond game is very, very winnable, and they probably should win the other 2 games. So we should see Port Adelaide in the top 4. Moving on to the rest of the AFL Run Home, the situation has changed a fair bit from last week. There was 11 teams in contention last week, if you include Freo, and we can probably eliminate 4 now. Essendon, despite the fact they beat North Melbourne, their percentage is probably too low. Probably not playing well enough. Richmond, Richmond, Gold Coast and Fremantle definitely won't be able to make it, barring miracles. Let's talk about the teams that can. So we'll speak about 5th to 8th, and then the teams that are just outside the 8th. So we've got Carlton, Western Bulldogs, St Kilda and GWS, who are currently sitting in the 8th. And we've got Geelong, Sydney and Adelaide, who are outside the 8th. Putting you on the spot right now, how do you see that situation? Do you see it staying the same, or do you see it changing?
I think the one I can see coming in is Geelong. They obviously premiers last year. We know they're a great team, so I feel like they'll probably come back in. I'm a bit worried about GWS. So they've probably been one of the informed teams, but they've left it late and they've got a very difficult fixture remaining. So I'm not sure about that one. Where do you see that playing out?
Yeah, for me, I think that Geelong is definitely the strongest contender to come in out of the team. They are having some bad injuries. So Jack Henry's out this week as well, which we'll speak about a bit later when we talk about Geelong's when Geelong play Collingwood. And they're obviously missing Hawkins and Blitzarves as well. I don't think either of those players will be back this week. So, yeah, it's interesting. It makes Geelong have to play Collingwood, have to play St Kilda. I'm not sure off the top of my head if they play the last round, but I mean, playing Collingwood and then playing St Kilda at Marvel, Marvel was a place they don't particularly play well at. It's a tough game, so a lot will probably hinge on that St Kilda Geelong game for Cats. GWS, tough run home. They've got Carlton, they've got Port Adelaide among those games, and so there's still plenty to play out. I think the team that is most likely to come out is St Kilda. I think that they'll definitely be out if they lose to Richmond this week. They probably will be favourites against Richmond and probably should win, but who will know? And then if they do beat Richmond, it'll come down to the Geelong game at Marvel, because I don't see St Kilda beating Brisbane in Brisbane last round of the season. So, yeah, I've seen some ladder predictors that have had Adelaide in as well. So there's still plenty to play out. Moving on to the games this weekend, Collingwood Geelong Friday night. If I had to put you on the spot to tip, who would you tip?
I'm going to say Collingwood for that one.
Sounds good. You think Collingwood will bounce back?
Yeah, I think they'll be able to bounce back. And yeah, it's going to be a tough game for sure for both teams. And Collingwood, they're not quite as down as I think people think they are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they will be obviously miss Daicos and Murphy, but apart from that, they've actually got almost a full list to choose from. It was just, I think, Finley McRae and Charlie Ding off the top of my head who has been out. Other than that, I think that they should get the job done against an injury hit Geelong. But I mean, imagine what will happen if Geelong win. We'll be plenty to talk about next week. The other games that are up this weekend are Sydney Gold Coast at the SCG. Do you see Sydney having any problems at all with the Gold Coast at home?
I think they'll have problems. It's not going to be an easy fixture, and Gold Coast sort of playing with nothing to lose. I would still tip Sydney to win that one. They're not too far out the 8, and it's a must-win game for them. So Sydney, but it could be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I thought the Suns were. I watched bits and pieces of the game against Adelaide last week. I thought they were pretty good at times. They're taking the game on, as you said. They're playing like they've got nothing to lose, which will be interesting. I'd be tipping Sydney as well. It's a game that Sydney won't want to drop because it'll probably rule them out of contention. Later on that day, Brisbane are playing Adelaide at the Gabba. Adelaide have suddenly sprung back to form. Matt Crouch is getting 40 touches a week after not getting a game. Do you give Adelaide any chance at the Gabba?
I think you have to give them a chance. I don't think any team's won at the Gabba this year away, so pretty difficult. They're in a bit of form. They're probably one of the teams that could sneak into finals. So if they do win, it's lids off maybe. But
I tend to agree with you. Brisbane did drop a game late last year, but they really need to finish in the top 2. So they've got so much to play for in that regard to get home finals, because we all know that they struggle away from home. So I don't think they'll be resting any players or be keying the chickens at all. So yeah, you definitely probably have to tip Brisbane for that game. On Saturday night, what a crack at the MCG, Carlton and Melbourne at Marvel. What are we going to learn from that game?
We're going to learn a lot. Definitely about Carlton, where they sit, and might even get Clayton Oliver coming back in for Melbourne. So it could be a real midfield blockbuster. I still have to tip Melbourne for that one, but if Carlton do win, then you probably almost have to consider them right up there for flag favouritism.
It's exciting having Clayton Oliver back, just as neutral football fans, but also for Melbourne, because they've actually played quite well without him. So it'll be interesting to see if he can first get up and going and get close to his best. You might not see it this week, but also what it means, does it mean Petrarch play more forward and make Melbourne all the more dangerous? Melbourne have lost Harrison Penny, which is a bit of a blow. He's been in pretty good form, and it'll be interesting to see if Grundy comes back in, because Penny's out, and that was probably last week was probably the only reason why he didn't come back in. So interesting times for Melbourne. Move across to Sunday, Hawthorn. What a win over Collingwood last week. Meet the Bulldogs in Tasmania. We all know how well Hawthorn play in Tasmania. Do you see this game as a potential banana skin for the Bulldogs?
It's a bit of a danger game. I think they'll get through it though. Hawthorn, we've seen week to week, they're pretty inconsistent. But if they come out like they did against Collingwood, you never know what happens.
That's the thing with Hawthorn. You just don't know how they're going to play. We saw them play against Port Adelaide a few weeks ago, and they conceded a ridiculous amount of goals in the first half, and then they actually played outstanding first half. Against St Kilda a few weeks ago, same deal. They beat Brisbane at the MCG. They've won some quality games of football. There've been a lot of games where critics would have said they probably wouldn't have been. I think this game, I wouldn't tip Hawthorn, but I give Hawthorn a real chance. The Bulldogs aren't particularly good travellers. We saw when they went to a boutique ground at Ballarat. They didn't play that ground that well. The conditions were windy against GWS. They've got a lot of strong, tall forwards on the team that probably suited more to Marvel than to with possible windy conditions at Tasmania. You're not going to get the wind break from the stadium. So I wouldn't tip Hawthorn, but I do give them a chance, and that could definitely throw a spanner in the works for the finals race if Hawthorn win. St Kilda Richmond on Sunday at Marvel. St Kilda coming off a pretty disappointing loss after playing well. Richmond coming off a really disappointing loss against the Bulldogs. They look pretty lackluster. How do you see that game?
It's an interesting one. I could almost see Richmond winning this one. I don't know why. I just feel like they've got one last good push to make finals, and the Saints, they've been a little bit shaky. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think if you go either way, I think you'll find that Dustin Martin and Trent Cotchin will come back in this week after being rested last week, and that will deeply improve the Richmond team. They look like they're lacking a lot of leadership against the Bulldogs. Yeah, it's a 50-50 game. Richmond don't play Marvel too well. St Kilda are inconsistent as all. So yeah, and a win for Richmond will give them a tiny sniff. I don't think they can make it. A loss to St Kilda will make it very difficult. They'll probably have to beat Geelong and then Brisbane. So big game there. And to finish off the round, we've got Port Adelaide and GWS at Adelaide Oval. We've seen GWS play some really good football at Adelaide Oval recently when they beat Adelaide. Do you see this game as being straightforward for Adelaide to win, or do you see GWS really challenging?
I think it shows, Kieran, just how tight the competition is, and it's another sort of very interesting fixture that we're going to have to watch. So GWS have been in really good form probably up until that Sydney game, which was a derby. So, it could go either way. So Port Adelaide, down in form, lost 4 in a row. They really need to come back. So I'll probably tip them to come back.
I'll tell you what, I'm excited this round of the AFL. 7 games that have got huge relevance to just the battle for the top 8. There's obviously other permutations up higher on the ladder, top 4 and everything. There's been a few players that retired this week. It's that time of year. Just wanted to I guess honour them. Some of the careers have been magnificent. Luke Shuey, 246 games, Norman Smith medalist when the West Coast won the flag in 2018. He's also been the Eagles captain since 2020. Obviously, injuries have cruelled him. Sad to see him retire. Ben Cunnington, who I liken to the Chuck Norris of the AFL, possibly one of the toughest players to play the game. A man in few words, but admired that at North Melbourne. 2-time BNF winner. Finished runner-up 4 times, just to show how consistent he was. 229 games. And finally, Aaron Hall, who maybe didn't have as a distinguished career as the previous two, but 161 games at AFL was nothing to be sniffed about. And we all remember in 2016 when he led Brown up 10 games after that extraordinary start of the season. So well done to those players on great careers. And we've got a great round of football coming up this weekend. I'm Kieran Francis. This is Bryn Wakefield, and you've been watching the AFL Run Home.